So let's look at some of the ownership structures throughout the world. And this is really getting to the main point. Corporations, let's first divide it into a taxonomy. The first divide is it owned by many people or a few people? In the United States, at the bottom, most corporations are owned by the market. And as we talked about before, there's a gigantic brick wall, so the owners of the companies don't really know what these companies are doing, don't even know many times what companies they own. They can talk all they want about environment and social programs, but the bottom line is they're short-term ROI driven because they're just looking at their statement. That's the nature of capitalism, the nature of our pyramid in this country. It's designed that way. In another case, let's say a company has a high concentration of ownership, the pie chart. Some of them are owned by wealthy families, by just a few wealthy families. That's the way the United States used to be with our robber barons. The robber barons weren't the nicest guys, but at least they were human beings. At least they knew where the money was coming from, and they could regulate the pyramid to some extent. And that's the way things are very much in Europe. In other cases, institutions actually own a large part of the share of the companies. And in the United States, a lot of those institutions are pension funds. But again, very similar to the stock market. The little old lady, the little old man doesn't know that he owns the oil company. Doesn't want to know. Pays the pension fund manager to not let him know. So again, it's the little old lady, the little old man that owns the oil company that's complaining about the oil company is speaking out of both sides of their mouth. Families, wealthy families, and foundations, which can control those companies and really craft what they're trying to accomplish from a company and a society point of view. And then a government. In certain governments, it's a few individuals that often rotate through that actually own that. So the important thing here is to understand the nature of the pyramid is driven by the nature of the ownership. So let's look at ownership structures worldwide. In the United States, it's many, many people looking through the brick wall. In Europe, it's families. In China and in Japan, it's mainly control by a few individuals in the government that often rotate through. It's control by culture. In Russia, it's very similar, but it's fewer people. In India, it's a few wealthy individuals. And then you have all the little countries that provide our resources, again, controlled generally by one or a few number of people. What is this story telling us about where we are and where we're going? One thing that is similar is that the governments of these organizations are generally marionettes. And in some cases, they're also the ones who get the funding, who get the resources, who get the money. So there's a lot of control. These pyramids have strong control, with one exception, the United States. The United States' strength, its greatest asset, is also its greatest weakness. We are owned by the market. And that is our greatest strength. We have grown through the individual efforts of many, many people. But as we start to fall from the top of the pyramid and we start to have a level playing field, we have fundamentally different ownership structures. Even if you don't understand how we're different and it creates a problem. And now that the pyramid is starting to come together and all these different pyramids are joining, we can easily be manipulated and controlled. And that's why it's important that we as orchestrators really understand what's happening here and understand if our interests are in the US, worldwide, or both. And they really are both. And we need to understand that as we start thinking about how do we get here, how do we manage the pyramid, and how is that pyramid going to change going forward. So now we're going to focus on the media.